Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate. Joe Mueller.
This is a take two. Welcome back to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number 45, broadcasting live from the IMN conference in beautiful South Beach, Miami. Here with me today is Lee Smith, an Indianapolis investor who owns a company named Spouses Buying Houses. He's a broker, an investor, and a property manager managing about 150 assets. Somebody I've known for the last few years, met at another conference a few years back. And based on my recommendation, he came down to IMN. Today we're going to talk about some of the takeaways from the conference, what we thought about it, and I don't know, maybe what the future has planned for us now that we're leaving this conference today. So welcome, Lee. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. So again, today I just want to kind of talk about some of the takeaways from the conference. I kind of pumped up the listeners that we have on the podcast. Number one, last time I was at IMN, I recorded a few sessions there and kind of gave an example of what it's all about. Because I think this is kind of a higher end conference for investors, and it definitely opens my eyes every time I come and motivates me to, kind of grow my business when I get back home. So I kind of want to hear what you think about that thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good conference. Didn't know what to expect. Didn't come in with high hopes. Didn't come in with low hopes. Just came in and wanted to experience it. The session started out with a session about how the market is doing, and that was really, really good. And then they had a bunch of different sessions about bunch of different things that are, single-family rental related. A lot of 4 or 5 guys up, panel discussions up there talking about what they're doing, what's working, what's not working. But there was just a ton of networking going on. Pretty much everybody you meet here is actually very active, very doing deals. So there was just a tremendous amount of networking and a lot of creative people. You got people who've got 10 properties running around, and you got a guy, you'll meet guys that are 30,000 plus units. It's pretty interesting. So it's been a pretty good conference, I think, overall. A lot of good times and a lot of good friends and a lot of good contacts we're making.
Yeah. Last night we actually met a guy, or Lee met a guy at the bar last night. We won't get too far into too much detail, but kind of impressive. He has, 44,000 units under management, if I remember right?
Yeah, owns 44,000 properties throughout the U.S. and
26 states.
Yeah,
700 employees. So this conference, again, that just sounds like mind-blowing to me. And to have people that you're in the room with or having a beer with at the bar that you can kind of have discussions with openly. They don't really know much about you don't know much about them, and then some of the details kind of come through the topics you're talking about, maybe just bullshitting around, and that's pretty awesome. This guy's pretty impressive. I think both of us plan on trying to connect with this guy in the future, just to kind of bend his ear about, how to grow some of the property management sides of our business.
Yeah.
So since we got you on the show, Lee, and I do want to have you on like more of a specific episode at some point here in the next few weeks, more about what you do in Indianapolis, but why don't we just give a brief overview of kind of what you're up to, and so the listener has a better understanding of who they're hearing.
Sure. I am a real estate broker. I own my own brokerage, but don't hold it against me. I also own a property management company. I've been flipping houses since 1991. Started property management in 2007. Pretty much have just been dealing with who I want to deal with, when I want to deal with them. But last year we started deciding we wanted to kind of grow this a little bit bigger as far as property management and investing goes. Managed about $20,000 to $25,000 a month in rehab for guys, including myself. And then we do a lot of, so I help them with the purchase, I help them with the rehab, I help them with the property management, I help them with the sales. I work with investors both domestic and internationally. So we're pretty busy in Indianapolis. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
So at the end of the podcast, we'll give out your contact information, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
In case there is a listener. We do have a pretty wide listener base, and I know Indianapolis has always been kind of a hotbed for investors for the last 10 years or so, based on the fact it's been one of the most stable markets in the country for was it appreciation or?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much 3% appreciation or depreciation.
Right.
Even in 2010, we were only down about 10%.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. And I think that's why a lot of investors have kind of flocked to Indy as well. Is a lot of infrastructure growth, and the city's pumping a lot of money into the town, and it's a great investment environment. As I broadcasted last time about the IMN conference, Chris Davis is also here with us, and Eddie McCracken from down south. We've had him on the podcast before. I think he was like episode number 3 or 4, and then he came on a second time in the episode number 21 to talk about Section 8 properties. They're all here together. Eddie ended up leaving last night. The rest of us are leaving today, so we didn't have a chance to kind of get together and do a group podcast, but we've got me and Lee here now, and that's what we want to kind of talk about a little bit more. So this conference itself, for anyone who hasn't heard me talk about it in the past, it's the IMN Conference Single Family Rental Forum East, and I came out probably 4 years ago to the first one, really not knowing what to expect. I came out more in a broker capacity initially, thinking that with the way the market was, with all the hedge funds that were coming into these cities and buying hundreds and thousands of properties and fixing them up and renting them out and holding them in their portfolios, and maybe I could get a taste of that in the Chicago area, which I ended up making some contacts. I was working with a few hedge funds at the time, and my intention was to grow that. And what really happened was it opened my eyes so much to my own personal investing that it made me realize that I didn't really need to spend as much time focusing on working with other people, but more time focusing on my own business and growing it. And not a knock on how I operate, but most people when they deal with, and I'm going to digress here, I have a tendency to do that. Most people when they work with a real estate broker, they just assume that the broker is just a broker, that they're a licensee, that they're going to show them houses and make offers and act in that typical real estate agent capacity. And I have a number of clients that I've had to have discussions with, especially in the last few years, where I need to tell them, hey, you know what? I'm actually a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. And, part of the reason why I finally came to that conclusion, and not that I'm necessarily firing clients, but sometimes I'm not available to, drop what I'm doing and show a house right away. And part of the reason why my attitude has changed is because of conferences like this, because I realize that I'm running a business. We have employees, we've got staff, we've got 20 brokers working for the company, and we have a large portfolio of rentals that we own and manage and rehabs that we flip. So being here helps me grow that thought process, helps me kind of reset my brain on what the next step is. As a matter of fact, I was talking to you guys a couple weeks back about that non-performing note that I ended up purchasing in Lake in the Hills, and I have not updated on it recently. But my initial thought with this note that I bought for $115,000 was that I was going to throw some paint and carpet down in that property and just resell it on the open market as essentially a rehabbed property and list it for $169,900, make a nice little profit there. As of today, I'm officially not going to do that. I changed my thought process again because I came here and I realized it's still going to make a great addition to the rental portfolio that I hold, and I am literally just going to go home, paint it, and put it on the rental market. There's no reason I need to sell that property. So again, that's one of the great things I get out of this. If I'm going to get $500 a month out of that property, I'd much rather have that than, I know it sounds, to a lot of you might not understand this, but that profit margin of $30,000 or $40,000 that I would have made on it is awesome. But the long-term growth, the long-term opportunity and potential out of holding that rental for the next 10 or 20 years is much more beneficial to my business than just a one-time flip.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had a goal this year that I wanted to add another 60 properties for property management.
I love that goal.
We're about 15 properties into it this year. We're chucking along on this. And, after meeting this guy last night, I'm thinking, in the back of my head, I'm just like thinking I really just need to crush it on the property management stuff. And he gave me some great tips and tricks and kind of a plan, a roadmap, a brief roadmap, but still enough guidance that it really kind of changes my whole thought processes. I'm thinking not 60, but maybe 300.
Sure.
Or what do the Grant Cardone 10 exit,
right.
and we're at 600, I had 600 in a year.
Add a zero, I love it.
And so, it's definitely, it changes your whole thought process. I mean, you're running around and you see, soft-spoken people over in a corner, and you stop, you start talking to them, they're managing 500 units,
Yep.
and and a lot of times they're showing up. They're in your neighborhood. They've got properties in Chicago or Indianapolis or whatever,
Right.
and they're struggling with property management or something like that. So it's a great. I mean, like you say, it's really changed my attitudes on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, what was cool is on the in the mornings of this conference, they'll start the day typically at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock with what we'll call the general session panels, where our topics anything from like how to start your own hedge fund to how to manage your portfolios better through more efficient property management, whatever that may be on that panel that day. There's topics running concurrently throughout the day, basically from 8:30 in the morning till 5 at night, with some breaks in between. But in the morning sessions, before the rest of the group gets started, they have these private sessions, they call them. I think they call them closed door sessions. And in order to be a part of those, you can't be a vendor, so you can't be there with like one of the booths. You can't be pitching your product or whatever. That's the intent. And it's just, I'm going to say, more regular type guys that have built up businesses, whether it's in flipping or in rental portfolio. And on day one, it was getting your flipping business. I think the topic was from 50 to 100 flips. And on day two, the topic was building your rental portfolio from 50 to 100 rentals. So kind of like doubling your business essentially on the investment side. And I personally seem to get the most inspiration out of stuff like that, because we go around the room, you got 20, 30 guys, gals in the room, and they start talking about where are you from and what do you do is basically the initial question. And even yesterday we were in one, which was the 50. Did you sit through one yesterday, or were you the family office?
I did the family office.
Family office. Yeah, I want to hear about that since we're recording. Let's talk about that next. So on the one I sat through was building your business from 50 to 100 rentals. And for the people that know me on the podcast, they know that I have over 50 rentals at this point, but always looking to hear what everyone else has to say. And most of the people in the room had, there were some guys that only had 5 or 6, which is awesome. And there was guys in the room, as for a matter of fact, there was like a 30-year-old kid from Miami, I'm going to say kid, who has 600 single-family houses. He followed a build-to-rent model, so he built or was a partner in, somehow put together, a business model where they built 600 properties and converted them all into rentals. I mean, again, just a cool environment to hear what other people are doing, how they've done it, where they're buying, what their return on their investments are. It just a huge takeaway for me to think about how much more opportunity there really is out there instead of that little bubble that we typically all live in on a day-to-day basis. So that's my little 2 cents on the morning sessions that we experienced. The flipping one that I also sat through with Chris Davis on day one was also pretty cool. Talked a lot more about how to be creative in your acquisition strategies nowadays, as a lot of these guys that are here have actually followed the more conventional methods of buying investment properties, at least from what my takeaway is. A lot of MLS, a lot of auction stuff, a lot of online auction like auction.com, Hubzu, things like that, and then a lot of MLS-based purchasing, which that proves the theory that I've always talked about, that there are opportunities out there. But these guys sometimes see the bigger picture. They may be willing to pay full list price or maybe a little bit over retail today, knowing that 12 months from now that those numbers are going to look really good. And when you have those types of financials backing you, if you've got a fund backing you, or you've got private money backing you up, or however you're getting your financial resources from, that they're seeing things like, not necessarily with a crystal ball, but they're predicting into the future that they may pay $100,000 today, which seems like too much for you and me who are always looking for that discount. But a year or 2 or 3 years down the road, after you've owned this rental property and it's producing income for you, that no longer does that matter, that it's worth 100, and now it's worth 140, 150 anyway, as the markets continue to appreciate. So interesting topics that I attended. So Lee, why don't you talk about this family office thing, which the whole term family office confused me at first. So let's talk about what family office means, and then I want to hear a little bit about that session you sat through.
All right. Well, first off, I kind of wanted to go back to your scenario.
Sure.
It was interesting because you're in a room with like 100 people, and the speaker up front would say, how many people are buying properties off of MLS or not on the MLS? Mm-hmm. And literally, there was only like 5 of us that would raise our hands. Right. I mean, out of a room of 100, 5% of us are buying stuff that's not on the MLS.
Very interesting.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that that just goes back to what Joe was just saying. That, I mean, there's deals out there if you're watching them. I mean, we in our organization, we do a daily deal list where we cruise the MLS every day. We sell that list to our investors, and I tell those guys, man, if you're watching it, if you're really watching it, you're going to see at least one deal a week that you're going to be able to get under contract. And so, I mean, it really kind of goes back to it. All right, so let's talk home office. Home office. When I first thought about it, I'm thinking to myself, oh, home office. I got a home office. Hey, it's cool, man. I got my home office. It's down in the basement, and I got my two 27-inch monitors, and I want to hear what everybody's doing in the home office automation. And I got there, and it's not a home office. It's family office, and you're talking families, generations of families who've been in the same business, family business, and so they've been doing the same stuff for generation after generation. And so this was the guy leading it is part of a family business. He was just talking about how they work, how tight-knit they are, but how you can get in and kind of start talking to them and start doing deals with them.
Clarify that a little bit for me, because even I'm still not 100% sure. So when they say family office, is that like they own like a doctor, like a company that medical servicing company or something? What does that mean?
I'm a little foggy still on it, but I'm thinking like you're talking to big families. You hear the families that are that are in a certain line of work, and they're it's generation after generation doing the same thing, right. And evidently a lot of these families are in real estate, and that's all they do, or they maybe just do commercial real estate, or they maybe just do I mean, it's just whatever they do, and they all these families talk to each other and work with each other. And so it was really interesting to hear. I mean, I after I figured out that I was in the wrong session for home office automation, it was really interesting to hear. You're talking about families that control hundreds of millions of dollars, and if not some of them billions of dollars, and they're looking for people who are and they're not looking like onesie twosies. They're wanting bigger stuff, and once you get your foot in the door, reputation is everything, because I mean, we've all seen it. You've seen those movies and stuff where they talk about families and everything like that. And if you burn yourself with a family, then you pretty much have burned yourself with all the families. Mm-hmm. I tell this when I get new wholesalers who come to me, and they're talking about, I'm going to be a wholesaler, and I'm going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I'm just going to rock this world. And I literally bang my hands on the counter and I say, look, man, reputation is everything. Mm-hmm. You really got to make sure that what you're doing is right. Your numbers are, right, or, you're clarifying that maybe you don't know everything, but you're going to be making sure that your reputation is everything. Because once you get burned, I mean, I got wholesalers in Indy who are doing tons and tons of deals, but every time I look at their deals, I'm like, okay, I know his ARVs are off, and I know his rental rates are off, and I know his numbers are wrong, and so reputation is everything. So anyway, so the families, mm-hmm. As I twitch my nose, like like maybe it's a a mob thing or something. But the families are really it was really eye-opening, so it was pretty interesting to find out that there's these big families out there that they're looking to do big deals, and once you get your foot in the door, they're going to hand you over to other families to do even more deals.
So I think from what I gathered on what you're saying, and then the little I knew about that session, is the intent was, how does an investor like me or you start to build that relationship with one of these, we'll call it family offices, which maybe a better term is a family-run business, a large family-run business, to start building relationships with them in order to access, the capital that they have the potential to bring to the table. If you're going to be buying, or you want to get into a 100-unit apartment building, maybe you'd be able to, this type of session would put you down the path to start making those types of connections. Where can you find these types of family-owned businesses, and how do you connect with them? What are they looking for rate of return? And then building that relationship with a good reputation to a point where now they're kind of like your silent partner to some degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it was definitely eye-opening, and it was really interesting. It was one of the better sessions, I think. And I wasn't expecting it. to be what it was, but it ended up being really good.
And Lee's 100% right, because that's the reason why I did not go to that session, because I said family office. What the heck does that mean? I already have a family office. I already own my own company and my family works there. I'm like, why the heck would I need to sit through that? Well, then I found out later from Lee and the boys that attended, it was actually more about generating money from those types of connections and using them to do your real estate deals. I think it's a simple way to put it. So, again, interesting concept, great conference, and I know Lee has a few notes that we want to go over, kind of some of his takeaways from the conference that I think we can start getting into now.
All right. So the first day, the first session was kind of where the market is at and where we're going. And it was interesting to find out that I know we all think of like American Homes for Rent, and a lot of these big, huge hedge funds are buying all the properties. Well, these guys were showing statistics, and the statistics show that is just absolutely not true. I forget the exact number of houses that sell for investors each year, but only about 1 or 2% are actually going to these big guys who are owning 500 plus units. So you're not talking a huge amount of people buying a huge amount of properties. I mean, you're talking of the I don't even remember exact numbers, but
yeah,
if it was 1 million houses being sold, which it's more than that, you're talking 1% of that are actually going to these big hedge funders. So that's the number of them, not that one. Anyways, but it was just really eye-opening on that perspective. The guys who own 1 or 2 houses are like 75% of the market.
That's true. I remember that from the previous conferences.
Yeah, and another thing they said was traditionally in the United States, we've been about 70% home ownership and 30% rentals. But that number has been changing over the past decade to where we're now closer to 60% homeowners and 40% towards the rental market. And so that number is ever changing. And so they made a lot of statements about like almost even like we might get to a point of 50% rentals and 50% home ownership, which is really interesting to me. I mean, obviously, we're all into this market.
Sure. Can we talk a little bit about what you said? You touched on it real quick. The majority of the investors that own property in this country own 1 to 2 properties, which means that's your guy or your family, your gal that bought a single family house to live in, and then had to move up from their 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch to a 2-story, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. When their family grew, they ended up keeping the first house as a rental, maybe because through the downturn they couldn't sell it, or they couldn't sell it without short selling it, or they didn't have enough equity in the property to sell it. And those, was it like 70% of the investors are actually those types of owners?
Yeah, they're all 1 or 2. They only own 1 or 2 houses. I get it day in and day out. I get the school teacher who, gets married and she can't sell her house. Or I've got one right now coming up on the market that they bought a house here and then the wife got a job in California.
Right.
And they just bought this house and they can't do anything with it. So, the company's going to pay for their new house in California. So they're going to turn it into a rental.
So I think the real thing that you guys need to take away as a listener there is, for those who are still looking to grow their portfolios or do fix and flips and acquire more property, is the real majority of that untapped resource is that smaller owner, that 1 to 2 house investor. Instead of trying to necessarily scour, not that the MLS is bad, but for those who are looking for additional ways to increase the streams of acquisition that they're getting, is through some of those off-market methods, maybe that direct mail that we talk about, where if you can contact those absentee owners, those absentee landlords, that's why that is a successful method for a lot of wholesalers or for investors to acquire property. And I think that's something that we need to continue to consider as a really strong option in order to continue to buy more houses, is the fact that you need to be tapping into those types of owners, which tells me, look for those absentees, look for the ones, and for those who don't know, absentee means they own a property but they don't live in it, or they're an out-of-state type owner, which would insinuate that they're either an investor or they own a house, in another area that they're not currently living in. I mean, that's the simplest way to define it. And, hitting them up saying, hey, I'm a potential buyer, I'm an investor, I'm looking for a house in this area, creating a direct mail campaign in order to contact them is still going to be an opportunity, and something that all of us should be utilizing as a method in order to buy more houses. Again, one small piece of information from this conference that I think really needs to be reiterated multiple times through everyone listening, because that's where there's a lot of opportunity still sitting stagnant that could be tapped into. So for those of you who are already doing that, who are maybe doing a direct mail campaign and contacting these absentee type owners, good job. For those of us who have not started doing that, give it some strong consideration. If you don't know how to do it, you can always contact me, Joe at TannisGroupLLC.com, or connect with somebody else who knows how to get into those types of properties, how to create a direct mail campaign. There's tons of information on Bigger Pockets. There's a lot of information on YouTube. There's companies that generate these letters for you. There's companies that generate these lists for you. All those things are out there. Use that as one of your methods to buy more properties this year. So what else did you get out of this, or what other notes did you take away here?
So I've got some notes on here that I don't remember why I wrote. So so clearly my note taking skills are not up to par, or maybe there's been too much beer on the brain to remember it all. But I got another one here that millennials right now are a predominant amount of them are skipping the first time home buyer house, and they're going for the stage above that. So they're not looking at in my market, it would be the $80,000 to $125,000 houses. They maybe will rent for a few years, get up a little bit of a nest egg, and then they're going for the higher end houses.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So that could tell me that there's going to be, or there's going to be less demand for your bread and butter 3-bedroom, 1-bath type properties, because and I've talked about this before, the millennials are typically renting longer, and like you said, maybe saving up more money in order to buy that bigger move-up house is what I call it,
right,
5 years down the road, instead of a year from now buying a smaller home. But the positive to that end of it, to me, says that means there's going to be more inventory available that an investor might typically want to be a part of, because as I've said before, I think the best single-family rentals are your bread and butter 3-1 type houses. Yeah. Okay, good notes. I like that.
We all seem to know this right now. The market is really changing this year, especially. I'm running into a lot of multiple offer situations, even on properties I'm listing. So demand is very high, and then there's a very low supply. So you really need to be looking outside of the box. Mm-hmm. Like we said, you can still find deals on the MLS, but you need to be finding some stuff outside of the MLS.
Sure.
So whether you're doing, marketing to the absentee owners, or there's a lot of other stuff you can market to. But you need to start thinking outside the box as to who you want to market to.
Yeah, get creative. That's one thing I brought up on my panel, which I am gonna put my panel recording on the podcast when I get the recording of it. It should take another week or two when they normally send it out. But yeah, getting creative in your acquisition methods for sure, in order to continue to grow your rental portfolio.
Let's see here. One of the statements that I have is that there's a very high Latino rental market demand, or Spanish-speaking, Hispanic-speaking market demand. I see that in my market a lot too. I've often thought about the fact that I wish I wasn't the redneck hillbilly from Indy that doesn't speak another language. Maybe I need to hire someone who's habla español. You know what I mean? That was something that a couple people were talking about. But one of the things that I'm seeing is that a lot of money is in deeper rehabs. And I think I preach this to a lot of my clients too, is you're not finding with the prolification of HGTV, mm-hmm. you're not finding as many of the, paint and carpet houses that you're going to make, 20% on. Everybody is aware of how to do paint and flooring.
Right.
And so you're going to have to find the deeper rehabs in order to find the numbers that you really want, and you're going to make some really good money. We do a lot of stuff. I manage a lot of stuff, or we'll manage any level of rehab. And so I'm day in and day out, I'm in real poop holes. Stuff where you walk in. I can tell you horror stories. Buy me a beer and I'll tell you. It's definitely a crazy market, and the deep discounts are showing up on properties that just need a ton of work and nobody wants them. I had a property offered to me free.
Really?
Last month.
Free.
And free, and needs about $60K a rehab.
It's not one of mine, is it?
No. Yeah, one of your people just called me and said, "Here, take this house, please." Your wife called me and told me that. No, But yeah, so I mean, some of the stuff is just, I mean, you really got to know your numbers. But I'm seeing that a lot. We're walking into houses, and I mean, it's not uncommon for me. I mean, we're doing $25,000 a month in rehabs, and I could do a lot more. We just haven't been picking it up as much as we wanted to. But we're going into houses and spending 40, 60 grand on rehabs, and but we're getting a lot better percentages on those deals.
So that's something that I've actually been preaching for a while, and I know I've said on the podcast, is I think that the best money to be made in flipping houses is actually in the ones that the most beat up house that nobody wants is where you're going to make the most money. And I think, just to break that down simply, I hate to repeat myself, but I do it constantly anyway, so I really don't care. It's going to scare off a lot of the investors that don't have a lot of experience. The guys that are looking, like Lee said, the guys are looking for these paint and carpet rehab jobs. This is not the market where you're going to be able to be successful in those types of opportunities. Yes, if you've got a huge appreciation gain on a monthly basis, like we saw back in 2005 and 6, where you could buy a house and make 10 grand on it the next month just by owning it, that was happening then. That is not what's happening now. The best opportunities are always going to be in those deeper rehabs, as Lee said, where you have to go in there and actually do some significant work, but then get a nice return as a result because of the fact you've really altered and improved the condition of that property, and you've created that, you've added value to it by doing the rehab.
Right, yeah.
Love it. Love that topic.
All right, well, here was one of the big things that really was an aha moment, I guess. Is that what I want to call it?
Yeah.
Was HUD, Housing and Urban Development, which is Section 8 for you people who've got Section 8 rentals. The new administration is coming through with a 60% budget cut, and if you don't think that's going to affect your Section 8, you've got another thing coming. So you're going to see some cuts, and so you need to be prepared for it. So not all your business can be in Section 8. Now that's not to say that our politicians don't like their voters, and a lot of their voters aren't Section 8. But I'm just saying that there's going to be some changes coming down the pipe, and you could be looking at longer time frames for inspections and stuff like that because they're not paying for all the people to be working the back desk. And you could be looking at some other issues like that. So that's something to definitely maybe. I don't do Section 8 in Indianapolis, but I know a lot of people who do, and so definitely just need to be aware of what's going on, guys.
So they're saying that Trump's going to make a huge budget cut to HUD, which is going to affect Section 8 essentially by reducing those types of monies they have allocated towards it.
Right.
Wow. So for those of you that are in the Section 8 business and are getting 90 to 100% of your rent paid every month, which is myself included, I have several Section 8 rentals that I own as well as manage for other investors. I did not hear that, which is awesome because you sat through that session and I missed that one. But that's definitely something to consider. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like your common sense investment strategy that your financial advisor from Charles Schwab will tell you anytime you sit down with them, which is don't have all your eggs in one basket. So if you're currently in the Section 8, 90% of your holdings are Section 8 properties. I'm not going to say go ahead and sell them all tomorrow, but maybe start considering the fact that you could be anticipating some reduction because the one thing about Section 8 is when they're getting that supplementation and that benefit, the chances they're going to actually be able to come up, budget, and pay for whatever additional rent that may be lost as a result of that budget cut is probably very unlikely.
Right.
So you could be seeing some significant hits to your monthly income as a result. Well, that is a great piece of information, actually. Did they say anything else about the market or anything that you took away?
Like I said, low supply, high demand. There was a lot of numbers being flown around, and they were very eye-opening to me as far as the market goes. I need a day or so to process everything that's going on and in my thoughts, and then actually go back over and look over those slideshows.
Cool.
There was a lot of good stuff going on. There was a lot of vendors here.
Yep.
And a lot of good technology, a lot of good just stuff that I think we're gonna redo. We're gonna try some new products. We're pretty much, my office, everything is pretty much standardized. But I think I found at least 2 or 3 products here that were
like what?
So I'm a huge. This may be boring to most people, but we love this Allure flooring. It's it's an adhesive-based product that only Home Depot sells, and it's awesome because I can put it in my low-end rentals, and if some yahoo decides to punch a hole in the middle of the floor or put a cigarette butt out in the middle of the floor, I don't have to pull up the entire floor to get to that one piece. I can use a heat gun, heat it up, yank that one piece out, put a new piece in, and bam, we're back to the races. We got a brand new floor again.
Sure.
And so I ended up going over to the Mohawk booth, and they've got an adhesive-based product, and it's a vinyl-based product. But it's you put their adhesive down on your existing floor, and then you lay this on top, and it sticks to it. But if you get a bad piece, you could just pry the one little piece up and put a new piece in. And they say that, the salesperson, she says, if you're selling a house and they don't like the house, they don't like the color of the floors, you can just yank it up and put a new floor down. And she's like, the glue is good for 3 tries.
Really?
Yeah, so you can pull one piece up, put a new piece in, and then if you later on you want to do it again, you can do it again. So you can do it 3 times before you have to do something with the glue.
So for a landlord, then obviously for turnover, stuff like that, like you said, they screw up one piece of the flooring by putting a cigarette butt out on it or damaging it with a chair or whatever. You can easily just rip it
refrigerator,
yeah, sure,
chair, yeah, like you said, yeah.
And that's Mohawk.
And that's Mohawk. It's called the Permanence line. So I was real interested in that, and then. We stopped by the Kwikset booth. We use smart keys, which lately I've had about, I would say, between a 5 to 10% failure rate on the smart keys, not working straight out of the box.
Well, tell them what a smart key is, because I've never really talked about that.
Oh, okay. So Kwikset makes Kwikset is door locks. They make a system for fast changing keys. You can rekey a lock super duper quick. It's basically you slot your key in, the one that works. You turn it 90 degrees. You put this little, I don't know the poker device or whatever it is,
Pin, yeah, it's a pin.
Yeah, a little pin. You put this pin in the hole, and then you pull your key out. You put the new key in, and you twist it, lock back, and you're off to the races. And you've rekeyed the lock.
Right.
We use it a lot in our business. There's another company out there called Landlord Locks where you're pulling tumblers out and swapping them real quick, but they're pretty expensive. I think they're like $60 to $80 a set. And you can buy these smart keys for $40 for 2 sets. And so, so I stopped by there, but we've been having some failure rates on the smart key. So I about had my fill, and I stopped by a Kwikset booth, and the guys were, they were like, yeah, we had a bad batch come through. Of course, they don't advertise that stuff, right? And so they were real quick to tell me that they were going to sell me. They got a reset device that you can use, and they're going to send me one. So I thought that was pretty cool. Let's see, what else did we look at? Oh, I do a ton of rehabs. I mean, we're just always out looking at properties for clients. And I'm looking for fast ways to do scopes of work. And, I go through a room and I'll walk through. Right now, I videotape every room I walk into, and I record like, we need to do the switch plates, and we need to paint the walls and paint the trim, and we need to redo the ceiling, and we need to, blah, blah, blah. And then I have a transcription person who she transcribes it all for me, and then I use that to load up my scopes of work. Well, there was a company here, and I don't have the card in front of me, but they have a product that they're selling for home inspection for move in and move out for tenants.
Okay. And
it's basically you go through and you can click a button as you're looking at each item in a room, and it'll trigger it like, how good are the walls, 1, 2, or 3, and how good are this. But I'm thinking to myself in the back of my head, man, I'm gonna try this product out and see if I can use it the other way for the scopes of work, because they can print out reports based off of what you do. So I'm going to use that when we get back home. They're going to give me a free trial, so I'm going to try it.
What is it, like an app or something, or?
Yeah, it's an app on your phone.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so as you're walking through, so instead of like a lot of us do in rentals, we have those papers that we have to fill out, and fill out for every room and all that crap. It takes like an hour and a half or 2 hours to do.
Right.
And it's just you're either paying somebody to do it, or you're doing it yourself, and it's just time consuming, and I hate the time consuming stuff.
Sure.
And so anyway, so I'm going to try it. I'm going to go back home and maybe tweak it a little bit and see if I can get the reports out of it that I want. It may not work. I don't have huge hopes for it, but
sure.
if it does, it works,
Yeah, it could be very helpful.
Yeah. And so anyway, there was that. There was a ton of lenders here that are doing some real creative stuff. 90% of the purchase price, 95% of your, or 95 or 100% of your repair costs for fix and flippers. And they can also do portfolio loans. A lot of guys like that here. I mean, there was a ton of lenders here, but they all had pretty good products.
Yep.
Not all of them are working in Indiana. Not all of them are working in Illinois. But
That's right.
It's pretty interesting, pretty good.
Yeah, and if there's anybody that's listening to the podcast that has any more interest in maybe some of the vendors that we came in contact with, or I do get a lot of feedback from the podcast where guys, gals, investors are like, hey, I heard you talk about this type of lending product. Who do you use, or who have you talked to? I mean, feel free to reach out to either of us, and I'm sure both of us would be happy to reproduce that information, because one of our biggest takeaways from the conference is we made a lot of contacts. We have a lot of business cards. We have a lot of brochures, pamphlets, and flyers that came from these vendors, which a lot of them were lenders. And like Lee said, the Quickset booth was actually I've never used any type of lock change, or it's like a master lock key system, and that I look back in time and think, yeah, if I just would have done this from the beginning, which I know a lot of you listening are probably just getting started, and there's a lot of people that are already knee deep in the business. How much easier can your life be if instead of actually paying a contractor or going to a property and rekeying every lock in the 2 or 3 doors you might have on that asset, you can just slide a master key in, turn it to the left, and stick a pin in a hole and reset the tumbler essentially, and then put a new key in and rekey that lock. And literally, we're talking like 10 to 15 seconds, because I watched the guy demonstrate it. And the cost is impressive. I think it was like $30. It was somewhere just shy of $30 for a deadbolt lock. And then if you wanted a knob lock, which wasn't something they were really pushing, they said, yeah, just get like a normal knob lock without a lock on it, because a deadbolt's the most important. That does make sense. Right. I typically, when you go to Home Depot or Menards, you're buying a lock set, and it comes with a knob lock with a key and a deadbolt that are both keyed the same. The cost for a knob lock, I think he said, was like $15. So if you were to use a deadbolt and a knob lock master key system, it would roughly be about, we'll call it $40 to $50 per door. You could reduce that cost down even further to like $30 a door if you just did the deadbolt. But key factor being, if you've got a tenant turnover, or you've got, essentially that would be where it would apply. Move in, move out, or you need to access a property, you're always going to have access. You're always going to have the ability to rekey, these doors, these properties. I think that was a great takeaway. I didn't see the that scope of work type stuff you're talking, or the inspection stuff you're talking about, but I did not spend a lot of time in the vendor area this time. But no, that's cool stuff. I mean, I love the fact that you brought it up, so that's great.
Yeah, if we want to get nitty gritty, you can buy the for a while we were doing the knob lock and we were doing the deadbolt, and it was I was buying them on Amazon at first, and I was paying $12 to $15 for the knob lock, and I was paying $12 to $15 for the deadbolt.
Really?
Yeah,
that's a great price.
Menards, I like to call them Menards. Menards has got a contractor pack, and it's 2 deadbolts that are the keyable, and then it's just 2 knobs. They're not the knob locks, and that's what we've switched to at our organization. So you can get 2 deadbolts and the knobs for $40, $39.97. I think it is.
Are they on the master key thing too?
Yeah, the smart key. So they are the smart key for the deadbolts. So that's what we've been buying. We've been buying them in bulk. Every time we go in, we pretty much buy Menards out.
And one of the I think just to wrap up this topic, Chris Davis was here with us. He's got like 30 units now that he's built up in the last 2 years. He's mainly in the multi-unit space. He only has a couple single families, and he was talking about how the day he left, we left at like 6 in the morning, but maybe the night before we left, how he literally grabbed all the keys out of his truck, which was like a handful, like a big ball of keys, all properly labeled, of course, I'm sure, and handed them to his wife before he left, and like threw them on a table like, hey, here's 47 different keys. And if there's a problem, here you go. Have these ready in case we need to call one of the guys out to go fix something or whatever. If you're going to start utilizing this type of a master lock smart key system, you could literally be down to a handful of keys. Three to 5 keys is what the recommendation is, because depending on how many units, if you do have a large multifamily building, obviously you don't want to necessarily rekey them all the same. So in that case, you might have a larger amount of keys, but for your typical 2 to 4 units, I mean, you could duplicate that throughout different blocks, whatever areas you're buying in. It doesn't really matter because there's the chance, there's no way a tenant's going to take that key from 123 Main Street and go take it over to 246 Smith Street and go ahead and open a door with it. It's just it's the probabilities are very unlikely. So great idea, great concept. I myself am going to look into that as well because I think that's a great thing that I should have been doing a long time ago, because right now I'm kind of like Chris Davis, where I have literally little Tupperware boxes labeled full of different keys. I try to rekey all the locks in a house the same, but man, it would be great if I just had 1 or 2 keys and I utilize them house after house. I mean, it would just make things so much simpler. But yeah, I think that's a good start. I think we'll wrap it up with this. And if you guys want to get a hold of Lee or learn more about him, I will have him on a podcast here shortly with a one-on-one interview about more what he does in Indianapolis and how he can help you out if you're interested in that market. But Lee, why don't you tell them what your contact information is in case they want to talk to you first?
Sure, yeah, it's Lee, Lee, at spousesbuyinghouses.com. You can check us out on our website, spousesbuyinghouses.com. You can call our office number and they'll send it over to me and I'll give you a call back. Or like I say, spousesbuyinghouses.com. Lee at spousesbuyinghouses.com.
What's the phone number?
317-537-7249.
All right, so that's all we got today for the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, episode number 45, broadcasting live from the Single Family Rental Forum Conference in South Beach, Miami. It's May 3rd, 2017. Thanks for listening. Please give me a review on iTunes and Stitcher and Twitter and YouTube and whatever the heck else is out there. I'd really appreciate it, and you'll hear from us again soon. Thanks a lot, Lee. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, man, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Cool. Talk to you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investorempowermentchicago.com or tennisgrouprealty.com.